Welcome to the Thrive Business Mentorship Podcast with your host, Samuel Robinson, and this week's guest, Daniel Medina. Hey everyone, this is Samuel Robinson, and again, welcome to Thrive Business Mentorship Podcast. Guys, I'm so excited to introduce a very good friend all the way from San Diego, California, Fernando Cota. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. I can't complain. You know, San Diego, California.
Come on,
What can I tell
represent.
you? Yeah.
I love it,
We're
bro.
spoiled. We're spoiled.
Bro, I gotta say, like, you've got the weather, you got the food, man. I every time I go down, people ask me, they're like, why do you always go down to San Diego? I tell them straight up, Fernando, it's the closest place that I've been to, like heaven. Like if you wanted the environment, if someone asked me, what is the atmosphere environment of heaven? I'm like, San Diego, California,
Come
man.
on.
No, it's awesome. No, hey, listen, my friend, I'm so thankful for you to join us here today. I know we're going to have lots of listeners from around the world tuning in to this podcast. And so, Fernando, could you just give a little bit of an introduction of who you are to our listeners today?
Absolutely. So my name's Fernando Cota, and you might know I'm in the investment sector. We have a family office, and we invest in private companies, essentially, from different industries, anything from real estate, healthcare. We do startups, business and technology. And, what we do is we just we seek opportunities. We look for areas where, these companies can grow and how we can add value to them. And obviously they have to be aligned to the values and the standards of the family group. And that's what we do. We just go in, we partner with them, and we infuse them with kingdom DNA, so to speak. And, we try to create an environment and a culture within the companies that are aligned with biblical values and, who we are, as children of God.
It's awesome. Man, Fernando, I wanted to jump in and just, again, to say to our listeners, one thing I really respect about you and your family is how strong your values actually navigate you guys, even with opportunity. Like we've talked about this before, great opportunity that doesn't line up with values is something that you guys would, you would actually pass up on opportunity. And this is, again, for those that are listening today, I want to jump into a couple of things with our guest here, because I love, talking with you about, number one, about business, about the Lord. Actually, number one, the Lord. Number two, business. But I love talking to you, Fernando, because you always bring fresh insight into our conversations, especially around the marketplace and business. And so with that, I want to talk about a subject called making God your partner. You actually brought this up to me a while ago as we were discussing, how is the kingdom going to move forwards, not just in the four walls of the church, but how are we actually going to see the kingdom move in the marketplace and other areas of life? And so we've been talking about this whole philosophy of God as a partner. I would love it, Fernando, if you could break down that kind of that motto, that that revelation that God gave you to our listeners, and how can we see something like this incorporated moving forwards?
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, I'm a numbers guy.
Absolutely.
I'm an introvert, not really an extrovert. I think that you are the perfect counterpart to how I am, which is great because it's, there has to be balance in every business relationship and every endeavor and all that you do. So basically, the whole idea of partnering with Christ and with the Lord came about, a few years ago. I was at a retreat, Bethel retreat. Basically, on the way back from that retreat, it was amazing. I had an encounter with the Lord, and I was just thinking of ways of how we can make things better, how we can shift the tide, so to speak. And I'm always looking for areas of opportunity. I'm always looking in ways of how we can improve the status quo and things that are happening around us. And if you look at the current church model or the means by which it's able to sustain itself, it's essentially tithes and offerings and donations,
Yeah.
but if you look at the numbers, the historical data, this is not a sustainable path. You know, if you look at the evangelical or charismatic church, about 3% of Christians tithe on a consistent basis. And if you
Wow.
look at the whole of Christianity in the United States, it's less than 1%. So these are numbers that are alarming. And if, you look at the historical data, you see the downtrend,
Yeah.
it's becoming less and less so. So, you have to look at ways of how, as a church, we need to think radically and we need to think sustainably. And, the Lord is God of a lot. What
Yeah.
our background is in agriculture. And if you look at, just nature as a whole, there's so much abundance. He's a Lord of abundance. And, it's sad that you see that a lot of churches right now are struggling and, they're limited in their reach because
Hmm.
they lack the funds and they lack support in the way of economic support. And, it's a difficult situation that pastors have to navigate through because a lot of pastors don't necessarily have a calling to the marketplace.
It's true.
They don't have a calling to generate wealth. And I think that it should be a collaborative effort and a merger between, entrepreneurs and the church, and collectively move forward and collectively, go about executing the vision that the Lord has, bestowed upon our leaders. So for me, it was okay. How can we fix this? I see that this model isn't working, and just by personal experience, we give to churches here in San Diego, and you see a sense of desperation to some extent as to there's a spirit of exclusion with some
Wow.
churches
Yeah.
instead of working together, and which is what we should do. We should work collectively, and it's more of a individualistic spirit where, I don't go into your territory, you don't come into mine, leave my churchgoers alone, I'll leave, it's kind of like
It's
that
kind of like
spirit where,
the unwritten rule or agreement. You know what I mean?
right.
Fernand, I wanted to jump in real quick because I wonder how much of that is actually like a poverty mindset that of feeling like lack, and anybody that comes in there, it's a threat to. And I know, I and I want to try to say this as best I can, but sometimes people feel like there's only so much resource to go around, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Maybe the old model. And
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
some of that mindset, you know what I mean? So, but keep going. This is really good. I'm really liking this. Go for it, my friend.
So, essentially that's where we were. We were at a
Wow.
crossroads. We went to it was a dinner, and basically at this dinner we had, one of the churches that we support, they kind of give like a presentation, and essentially you could sense the sense of urgency that they had. They have so many things that they're doing, and it's great. I mean, it's amazing,
Hmm.
amazing the things that are happening. But, you know, whether it's good or bad, we need resources. We need funding for these
Absolutely.
things, And it's this weight that, these and this burden that these pastors have to carry. And, it's something that it shouldn't be like that. So for me, it was, okay, how can I help change this? No,
Wow.
what could be, something that we could possibly add in terms of the way that we do business, the way that we're structured. This is what we do, So we analyze areas of opportunity and all these things. And essentially what the Lord said was partner with me. But it's such a cliche. When you hear, okay, partner with God, I'm going to
Yeah.
partner with God, like it's just, but the Lord was saying, no, 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 don't give me your 10%,
Wow.
partner with me, make me and consider me as a God and a father who is active in your life and
Come
who is
on.
present. And he's, he has such a sense of humor because he told me, he said, listen, when you pray to me, do you expect me to answer you 10% of the time?
That's good,
And
man. That's really
yeah, and it was just, and it's so true. I mean, I get that. And I'm not judging anybody. I don't want to,
for sure.
um, everybody's called to do something and God puts in their heart what they should do. In our case, it's, to have this radical mentality. There's a sense of urgency to change things because you look around you, and we need to step up our game. The people that are in the position to do that,
Yeah.
as kingdom minded entrepreneurs, we need to step up our game. We need to, take a radical approach to things. So the Lord said, partner with me, make me an equal equity partner in your business or in your projects, which means there's two of us. God is the third partner. And how does that work? How do we go about making God an active partner in the fund or in the companies?
Hmm.
We create a board of godly men and women. They decide, how to allocate those funds, and we would basically have no say in terms of, how that money is used. Just, we would be one vote of, 21 other votes. And basically, the whole purpose of this is to create self-sustaining churches,
Yeah. I
but
like that.
it has to be done in a way where the church isn't risking anything in terms of material resources. So it
I
has
got
to
you.
be a win-win situation for everybody who's involved.
Fernando,
Yeah.
if I could just say this, I feel like when you're talking about this too, how often have you heard ideas? They could be coming from good-hearted people, but you're
Mhm.
already stretching out, whether it's a church, an organization that's already stretched out pretty thin, trying to get them to do something where it definitely doesn't feel like a win-win. This is what I love about the mindset that you're bringing to the table here. It's not saying that churches, if they want to participate, they can, but I love this about this mindset of, listen, we have to create win-wins. Like the kingdom is a win-win. And so I
Exactly.
feel like these ideas, I want to let you keep going here, are so crucial for those that are thinking as entrepreneurs moving forwards, those as pastors moving forwards. It's like we have to look at this that the kingdom's always a win-win. It's not a win-loss. And so I want to keep you going, my friend. This is really good.
So essentially, the whole point behind this is to, like I said, create self-sustaining churches
Yeah.
for us to improve their model and their structure. So, you have to look at a church from the lens of, you know, as a business, essentially, if you want to, give it a name or label it, and you basically analyze it as if you're buying it, no? So you analyze it, you look for areas of opportunity, you do, threats and all these things that, opportunities and whatnot,
Yeah.
strengths and all that, no? And you would basically, bring in a team of, professionals, they're financial people and they're, tax specialists and whatnot. And basically we would do like an x-ray
Amazing.
of the church and, kind of give the leaders a kind of direction as to, okay, how do we move forward and what are ways that we can get to that point where this church is
Wow.
self-sustaining. And not only that, something that's very important is that churches need to understand that they need to be inclusive with entrepreneurs that are members of their church. I'll tell
So
you
good.
something
So good.
which is this is something that was shocking a little bit for me, that when you talk to, business leaders that are members of, whatever church,
Yeah.
something that is a recurring and a common denominator is that they feel like they are not included in the decision making process of,
For
or the
sure.
strategy that the church is going to adopt moving forward.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. If the church is deciding whether to buy a building, you know, because they've outgrown the building that they're currently in, it's important to have people that are experienced in real estate and that are,
Absolutely.
you want to have, these advisors, no?
I was just going to say, Fernando, too, like how amazing would it be? The Bible specifically says, in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. So, there's credibility, biblical credibility already from what you're saying. But let's just take it on a very practical note. Wouldn't you want people that are already invested financially in one way, but also though the expertise, like you were saying with real estate, if it's a building, like it's right there, it's in front of you, it's available for you. And I think sometimes you see, I know I've seen this in churches too, where business people get regulated to helping set up and tear down of different events, whether it's Sundays or conferences. And again, there's nothing wrong with those jobs. It's just I feel like it's sometimes misplaced energy. And
Mhm.
so I feel like with what you're talking about, understanding who's in your room, who are those people, maybe the prayer that a pastor or a minister is praying, the answer is right in front of them. Could it be, Fernando, when
Mhm.
we actually start working together, realize, wait a second, God, you've actually blessed me. These people are a blessing from you and they're in my life. And so, Fernando, I'd like to ask you this. How do we start to integrate this? Because I think it's the big question that we're in right now is how do we integrate some of the, business, that business world, that the mindset and kingdom entrepreneurs with our churches? Because I feel like there's a lot of pastors that I know, they would love to do this, but some of them either are scared or they don't know how, Fernando. So what would be a good start to some of this?
I mean, I think, there are different routes you can take, and I'm not saying that, what we propose is absolute and,
Mm-hmm.
it's the only way to move
Mm-hmm.
forward. No, there's ways of doing it, and there are extremely, extremely capable and creative people out there who are
Absolutely.
entrepreneurs, who are kingdom, and these guys have amazing ideas, and they could probably come up with better alternatives than, what we're proposing. But what's important is this, that we need to understand and accept that the process that we're in currently,
Mm,
and the route or the road that we're on, is a road that's not sustainable.
so
Something that
good.
gives you a 3% return on your investment
Yeah.
is not something you want to be, involved in.
It's
And that's the
true.
reality. And and I get it. People say, well, God will provide, and God, he has the last word, and he's gonna, if he wants it, he's gonna make it happen. Yes, and I get it. Yes, yes, yes. God is amazing. He is amazing, but he also has given us a mentality,
Good
not of
word,
poverty.
Fernando. Good word.
We as a church have to be at the forefront
Come on, bro.
of all of these areas that we're trying to venture in. We should be at the forefront of science. We should be at the forefront of politics. We
Come
should be at the
on.
forefront of technology. We should be at the forefront of education. And this doesn't happen if you're passive.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's time for us to step up and say, listen, we understand that things aren't working out, and it's okay, but it's
Wow.
time for a change.
I like that.
It's time for a change. And, you know, the way that we do it, the process that we, are going to implement is what I told you. We're going to go in, we're going to look at, the church as if it's a business or a business opportunity. We're going to look at all the different areas, that they have and how they're
Yeah.
structured and say, okay, you lack efficiency here, you lack productivity here. This is something you shouldn't be. Let's say, you're heavily invested into your online presence and you literally have, 100 or, 50 followers or users.
Hmm.
Maybe if you look at the return on investment in terms of, okay, how much money am I putting into my online presence and how much am I getting back?
Exactly.
What's the impact? And I'm not just saying that monetary wise, but also the impact in terms of, okay, how many lives am I impacting through this,
Exactly.
through this division, this online division? Maybe, I would do much better if I used that money and went on, outreach, had like an outreach team. I'll
Yeah.
maybe impact more lives that way. So things like that, you want to make sure that what you're invested in terms of man hours and money, it's the right move for
I
the
like that,
church.
Fernando.
We want to be very efficient in how we use, and also, you know what? This is something that's amazing. We're stewards of the resources that God has given us.
Yeah.
So we have to be very diligent and very, very careful as to how, and very wise. We have to seek the Lord, with everything that we do so that He would give us wisdom and strategy to
Yeah.
be able to look for the best opportunities. And something that is somewhat alarming to me that is happening, right now, is that church leaders and churches are very susceptible to get rich quick investments
Yeah.
or
It's true.
invitations or proposals for businesses. Give me an X amount and I'll give you three times in,
10 times,
whatever.
100 times.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In 3 months. In 3 months. No, no.
No,
So, you have to, and listen, a lot of these may come from the right intention. I'm not saying that, these people are trying to scam the
for
church.
sure.
Some of these guys may really think that these are
They're helping.
legit
Yeah, for sure.
investments. Yeah. And then they don't pan out. No.
Yeah.
But that's another reason why it's, all the more important for you to, to make sure that you take steps on solid ground and solid footing.
With what you're just saying, I really believe that maybe part of the reason why these groups are susceptible to these get rich, scams in some ways, or however you want to put it. Someone told me the statistic was like over 95% of people that buy the lottery are under the poverty line.
Hmm.
And it was actually quite fascinating. And so, again, coming back to this place, Fernando, of how many churches would be less susceptible to get rich projects if they actually were taught how to live to be self-sufficient instead of looking for a again, sometimes, and I love this, we so believe in miracles and as a ministry, and we've
Mm-hmm.
seen miracles, but how much of this, my friend, is sometimes people are just, they're wishing that their financial situation would just change. And so they're looking for that moment or that project, and then they become susceptible. This is why I love with what you're doing, is that it's so practical. And for our audience here today, I want to encourage you. I also believe as God is spiritual, as God is supernatural, and He moves in our life every day supernaturally. As Fernando's talking, he's also very practical, and he's also very about the numbers, and he's also very interested in the intricacies of what we do. And I feel like as the body, if we could embrace each other, and one thing I love about your heart, Fernando, as you're talking, is that this isn't about, we're going to just find out what's wrong and then just exploit that and say, hey, you're doing a terrible job here. This is actually about, hey, let's work together and creating this thing healthy. Like, what does it actually look like to see organizations in revival as health, like self-sustaining? And so, Fernando, thank you, my friend. I don't know if there's any last
Thank
words
you.
that you would want to give to our viewers that are like, wow, I am actually getting stirred by this. Is there anything that you could just impart to them, 2 minutes of wisdom to get them on the right track to have God as their partner?
I mean, two things. Number one, for all the entrepreneurs that are kingdom minded, I would just encourage you to kind of do a deep dive in terms of how you can be an agent of change
Yeah, good word.
in your community, in
Good
your
word.
church, and in your company. It's great that there are a lot of, Christians that are getting together and they're doing businesses, and that's awesome. But we need to look for a radical approach. We need to look for things that, as I told you before, we need to shift the tide. So
Yeah,
I would encourage you to, look at ways to, make that impact and change things. And how can I make my church better? And how can I be part of something that's transcendent and something that's new and that's transformative, And for the, for the churches, I would encourage you to open yourself to these individuals who most likely, I mean, I don't know how many churches, but I'm sure that there's a significant amount of churches that have very, very competent entrepreneurs as members.
yes.
And I would encourage you to identify these people, reach out to them. As you were saying, Sammy, it's great that you know there are volunteers, and there are all these things that people do in terms of being parking attendants and
Hmm.
whatnot within the church, and it builds character. And I'm not saying that Steve Jobs shouldn't be a parking attendant if he's serving in the church. No, because it will shape his character, and that's great, and it's part of
Absolutely.
service. But however, I think that his talents would be much better utilized if he was, doing something that has to do with the structure of the church, or something that's
It's good.
strategic in nature, no?
Yeah.
So I think that those two things would be my 2 cents in terms of things that you can do immediately and that could be game changers for you. And
So good.
if you want to reach out to us, and we'd love to have a conversation with anybody who's interested, and kind of bounce ideas off each other, because I think that it's going to take a village. It's a
Yeah.
collective effort, and it's the entire body of the church who has to come together, and we have to support each other, and we have to seek God's wisdom. But two or three minds think better than one. So, it's something that should be done as a collective, as opposed to something that's individual. No?
Fernando, this has been so good, my friend. I know for myself, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of all the listeners here. Thank you for that. This is
Thank you,
refreshing.
Sammy.
I will say this. This gives me hope for the future as somebody that hosts a lot of business leadership events, but also does a lot of ministry in churches across Canada and the United States and different places around the world. This to me is part of the answer moving forwards. My friend, thank you for leading with boldness.
Thank you for having
Guys,
me on, Sammy.
oh man, we need to get you back on again. And so with that, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Thrive podcast here. And please connect with us. And thank you again, Fernando. We so appreciate you and your time.
Thank you,
All
Sammy.
right. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. Thrive Podcast is produced by Voice of Revival Ministries. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and other social media platforms. Visit voiceofrevival.ca/thrive for other connecting opportunities. Music produced and performed by Corey Mullen.